Okay, this video is how does a budget get passed, and it's all the different pieces that go into passing a budget. So the goal of the budget process is to approve a balanced budget at the end of the day. So I'm going to start off by talking about town meeting. And just because I'm putting some things higher on the page than others doesn't have to do with importance, it's just the way that it's going to fit on the page. So town meeting has 180 spots, and members of our community are voted into town meeting by their precincts. And a precinct is a subdivided area of the town, maybe a neighborhood, but you can look them up online what your precinct is. And so, for example, people who live in this area called Precinct 1 vote in Precinct 1 town meeting members. And that happens for all the precincts all over town. Currently, there might be openings in some of these precincts, and people will be running to be a town meeting representative. Okay, so next I'm going to go to talk about the town administrator. So the town administrator is Melissa Malone, and her responsibility, or one of her responsibilities, is to create a proposed budget. And in that budget, there will be two parts. There'll be revenue, and then there'll be appropriations. And her job is to create a preliminary one of that. Another important body in town is the Finance Committee, or FinCom. And then FinCom has lots of subcommittees within it. Some of those subcommittees are like the Education Subcommittee, the General Government Subcommittee, the DPW Subcommittee, and there's more. And in those subcommittees will be department heads. In the case of education, it would be like the superintendent, plus members of FinCom. And so in these subcommittees is where they can really drill down on the details of each of these individual budgets. So what happened back in January of 2020 is that the town administrator, so in January, oh, that's hard to read. In January of 2020, the town administrator made a preliminary budget, and that's the one that's on the website that you can find. And that was proposed to FinCom, and then FinCom met in subcommittees and started to drill down what was in that budget. So there are more than just these ones, but started to drill down what was in that budget and reported back to FinCom the entire group, each of these things. So that happened in January 2020, and that was all happening as normal. Simultaneously, we have the school committee, and Dr. Nolan, who is the superintendent, reports to the school committee. She also, in January of 2020, developed a preliminary budget, shared that with the town administrator to look at, and shared that with FinCom. Now, COVID happened, and typically what would happen is in the spring, in March, April, the town administrator would amend this budget. And so right now we're looking at possibly seeing an amended budget to this original preliminary budget around June 8th. So again, what will happen is that amended budget will go to FinCom. FinCom will meet in their subcommittees, drill down on the details, report back to FinCom the entire group. They'll take a look at school committee's budget, which oftentimes, and in this case, these two budgets do not match on appropriations for the schools. Take all of that, and then they will vote on what they're going to recommend for a budget. And so they have essentially three choices on what they can do with this. So they're voting on appropriations or expenses, and they have three options for what they can do. They can, on each line item, they can vote favorable, that yes, we agree with what this line item is. So say we're talking about a line item in DPW. Yes, we find that favorable. We find that amount favorable, and then we move on to the next one. They can also vote to amend that line item So change that line item to something else and then vote favorable or not favorable on that. And it takes a more than 50%. So 8 out of 15 of the FinCom members have to vote. Or they could vote no recommendation on a line item. So those are the 3 choices. So on every single line item throughout the budget, they do this, and then they pile those all together, and that's their recommendation. Now, what happens next is that town meeting happens. And so town meeting is going to be looking at the appropriations. Again, same as FinCom. They're looking at appropriations, and again, they're going to take it line by line, each piece at a time. And so a member of town meeting makes a motion to look at a certain item. They go in order of how they're listed. And for each motion, there are essentially 4 things that can happen. So the first thing is, so the motion might be made for a certain line item in DPW or the education budget. Okay, the motion is made that the education budget is X. Town meeting votes, and with an over 50% vote, they can vote to have that be favorable and have it pass through. They can vote for referral, which means sort of, we're not going to vote on that. We're going to put that off till another time. They could vote to amend it. And they could vote to accept that amendment, accept that change, or reject that change. If they vote to accept that change, then it kind of goes back up to the beginning, and they vote again whether that change is favorable or referred or amended. And then the final option is fail to pass. So for every line item in the budget, this process goes through until it's found favorable. For every single thing, when every single thing is found favorable, that's all put together, and that's the appropriations portion of the budget, and they've achieved their goal of a balanced budget, meaning revenues equal expenses. So town meeting votes through the appropriations, and the town administrator is the one pretty much solely responsible for the revenue projections. So what town meeting votes through and what town administrator has for her recommendation for, or her revenue projection, have to be equal in order for it to be a balanced budget. Now, the balanced budget has to be passed by July 1st, which is the start of fiscal year 21. Now, because of COVID and because of the difficulties in getting town meeting to meet and get all together, in this case, if it is not passed by July 1st, then the town will go to a 1/12 budget, which I'll cover in a different video. That's atypical. That's just for this year because of COVID. One thing that's important, I think, to note about the budget and the differences in the budget is that if we look at the budget, let's pretend this is the budget. What we'll see when we see the amended budget is we will see a line item like Natick Public Schools, and then we'll see the January FY21 budget, the preliminary budget. Then we'll see the amended FY21 budget, or the COVID budget, and then we'll see plus or minus the differences for each of the lines. So there'll be a line for NPS, there'll be a line for libraries, there'll be some lines for DPW, and so on. Bunch of lines going down. What's important is that for Natick Public Schools, they get a top dollar amount, and then they choose how to spend that money within their budget. So if Natick Public Schools gets X amount of money, they get that X amount of money, and then they choose how to appropriate that within their budget. It's different because all of these other line items, what's in that line item is their money. So it's not like if DPW has extra money left over, they could use it in the libraries. So that's an important difference between these line items in the budget and the Natick Public Schools line item. Okay, thanks so much for watching. I hope that was helpful.